Well, it's wonderful, wonderful to see you all here. And this is very much a sharing of our views, really. We've had existed for about 2 years, is it now, Annalisa? And we've had a variety of presentations on a variety of themes. Um, and so we thought that this one would be much more open on the subject of spirituality and the arts. And we thought that we would start because we have some people with whom we're very familiar, and some people who we don't know very well. If we could introduce ourselves and see what our relationship that we have in our practice or in our observation. Oh, look, Angelo, that's lovely.
Oh yeah,
Um, uh,
stunning.
and just share with us your views and your work and the spirituality that you see in what you're doing. But it's perfectly legitimate to say you see no spirituality in it at all. That's a perfectly reasonable position to be in. Then we can have a discussion. Okay, what we'll do is we'll do it by passing it on. So I'll call someone, and then that person will choose someone else to share their work and their views. And David, as I've already entered into a conversation with you, and I don't think you've been with us before, David Allinson, as opposed to the other David, who is David Perrin at the bottom. Yeah. But I'm asking David Allinson, would you share your work and how you see spirituality in what you're doing?
Oh, thank you, June, and good evening, everybody. I'm sorry I've missed these before. I'm really pleased I could make this one. I have an academic background, but I've held various jobs. I have a PhD in early Tudor music around the Reformation, so I'm very interested in historical context. But in recent years, I've gone freelance, and the great majority of my work involves leading choral groups, which are often formed quite randomly or by invitation or by public advertisement in sacred music, often in sort of historically resonant places. So we might be in the place where a composer lived or worked. We might be meeting on a feast day and singing that music or serving a liturgy. Or we might just be spending a week in a city where a composer was born in Italy or Spain or something like that. And what I've noticed very much and become very interested in is that people love the analog nature of being together, the unplugged nature in a digital world where we're all got at all the time by all those little alerts and the sort of incomplete nature of everything we have to do. That when we can be together and lose ourselves into music, something very special happens. And I've noticed that whatever the outward purpose of these rehearsals is, preparing a piece, perhaps for public presentation or a service, or just for ourselves, there's often a parallel inward program happening for people, which is that they're experiencing, whether they want to or not, whether they intend to or not, some spiritual inwardness, a parallel program which happens often through the week, in which it causes them to have moments of self-reflection or revelation. Can be very emotional. It could be to do with life experiences and health, or it can be to do with life's greater purpose or their own purpose in life. And actually, that's not ostensibly what we're doing, but I've become very interested in the way that sometimes by the end of these weeks, even quite hard-nosed and non-religious people, and of course we can separate religion and spirituality, but even quite hard-nosed people like that can be very revelatory in what they'll say if they choose to share, or you can tell that they've had these inward experiences. So I guess that will boil, I'll say no more, but I guess it will boil down to the way that a group can create an identity together, the way that people can lose themselves into this greater whole, because polyphony is so beautifully generated as a web of sound, of entries, and of listening as much as you broadcast. And also the way it reflects back on the person and crystallizes aspects of their individual identity. So it's identity loss and identity formation, which I've very much come to notice is happening through that process of just spending hours singing together, making music, often in an immersive way in a particular place or environment or situation. Thank you,
Thank you
June.
very much. Can I just say one thing? For this is an arts, and we've got a variety. Some people might not know the word polyphony. That's when music has lots of different melodies that miraculously fit together, or sometimes don't quite fit together, and we have to work at fitting them together, and so on. Okay then, David, hand over to someone.
Thank you, June. Shall I hand over to Annalisa because she's next on my screen?
Thank you, David. I'll catch the, I'll have the stick. I am one of the co-chairs of this initiative with June and Lila. We've been doing this for almost 2 years. In March will be 2 years. And I must say that when I hear something like David talk, I have now no doubts about the connectedness between spirituality and the arts. When I started my research 5 years ago, I was not skeptical, but full of doubts. I think there is still very little serious research in this field. There are many people that will argue that it is so and have written books, but I think academically, it's still, I don't think is yet a central topic. For example, I've done a master on religions, anthropology of religions in the contemporary world, and art was only tangentially touched upon, and it was really about the materiality of religions, and people who are researching the materiality of religious rituals and rites do admit that the arts, especially sounds and music, can bring people, lift people up into this spiritual dimension, or it's a different state of consciousness that we access, but it's always quite marginal. And what I would like to contribute is to bring the arts at the center of the discussion, particularly of spirituality, because as David mentioned, the arts don't necessarily need to bring any dogma with them. You can just experience them, and that could be enough. So I'm also a photographer. Before this, I was a banker. So I'm a bit of a hybrid mix of things.
Ought to say that your interest is in the visual arts, isn't it? It's quite difficult in this context because we're using two words. We're using art and the arts. So if when you're talking, and you're referring to visual arts, if you could say visual art, I think that'll make it clear, and so on, because we've got those words in usage.
That's where I have been coming from, but the more I'm doing this, the more I want to go into performance arts.
Okay.
So I'm kind of moving along my own path, and I would like to call on Hannah because I've invited her, and I think she might say something very, very relevant to what we've discussed so far.
Thank you, Annalisa, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this. And it's really good to be here and to meet you all. Although behind the screen, I actually have the word human tattooed on my hand. It's one of the few tattoos I have, and I normally run away from doing video calls, but I really wanted to be here, and the subject of it all just really, really intrigued me, and through our in-person conversation. So yes, just a brief intro about me. I am an artist. I predominantly create installation art, and it's very much the core, the heartbeat of it is about connection, and that's threaded throughout all of my work through the different iterations since I first started my own business when I was 21, about 20 years ago. And for me, the installations are about creating deeper listening and full body listening. And so it's really the touch points of architecture, sound, and science. And yeah, what you were saying about sound and live art, or what you're saying about performance art, and I wrote down live art, Annalisa. So it feels, yeah, there's definitely an aliveness to the work that I create. And the work is all very minimal, to really bring people back into their bodies, almost like returning to self. Yeah, sound is a huge part of it. For example, I just had an installation on recently at SASIG Gallery, and it was quite often with installation art, it could be the sound is almost like an afterthought. It's thought about after an addition, but it's always the sound that is very much at the forefront, and that is something that is very much first part of the conversation. So the sounds that we use, they were actually taken from alchemic crystal quartz sound bowls, and there was a heartbeat that ran throughout in synchronization to the light. And the heartbeat was actually sounds, 2 layers, an actual heartbeat with a shamanic drum. And you know, I didn't explain this to anybody that was going into the space, which was like a 4-minute durational soundscape, but people could go in and out of this dark room whenever they wanted to. And it was just something that's felt. It doesn't need to be explained. So I think the spirituality is just inherent in the work in a sense. You know, as an artist, it runs throughout. And so I don't know if that explains it, but essentially, you know, it's really just trying to cut through the noise, because there's a lot of noise in the world. I find I definitely feel it on a personal level, and so the art is really, you know, a lot of the work is placed in cities, you know, where I think people need it the most.
Thank you.
So not sure if that explains it, but
Hand it on, Hannah.
okay.
And the talking stick on.
I wonder, June, can I pass it on to you?
I shouldn't have asked you, should I? Caught hoist on my own petard, I think that was.
I'd love to hear.
I'm June Boyce-Tillman, and with Leela and Annalisa, we founded this group. I'm a musician. I'm also a Christian priest, but I'm very interested in the area of spiritual but not religious. I've composed pieces for Winchester Cathedral, and I've also, in a sense, set up installations, and that's what I'm working on at the moment in the All Saints Church in Tooting, where I'm an associate priest. And we're setting up, well, it's a golden tent made by an artist, alongside other interactive pieces of visual work and so on. I am also working in the same area as you with the crystal bowls, and I've just bought the most beautiful Chinese wind gong, and we're using those in the church for what we call Sounds of Sanctuary, where people can come and lie in one of the chapels and are simply surrounded by the bowls and the gong and so on. And at this precise moment on Sunday, I'm creating a sunrise liturgy for, well, hundreds of people on Tooting Common, which will have the Chinese wind gong and various sounds in the context, looking at what I call a common spirituality on a common ground. But so it's a mixture, really. I have a Christian background and I am a Christian priest, but I'm looking at the notion that Annalisa worked at, which is the notion of a dogma-free soundscape and how that brings people together. And I working with David, and you know, the notion that music is one of the art forms that does bring people together, and that's traditionally been singing, but there are other ways of doing that. I've edited 15 books in a series for Peter Lang on music and spirituality, which includes everything from women in Christian spirituality to the orishas and the djembe and the origins of the North American spiritual and so on. So I'm very interested in that. And I have taught in schools and at university level and so on. That's enough of me. And I'm going to hand over to Jonathan, who I think I've met before, haven't I, Jonathan? I think we met last in St Andrews.
Yeah, we did, June. Yeah, we were up at Theo something, Theo Artistry, I think it was called,
Theo
wasn't it?
Artistry, that's
Theo
right.
Artistry with George Corbett. And I
That's
was
right.
up there recently with him again, doing something wonderful. His conference on spirituality and music. I'm Jonathan Arnold. I'm a priest and a professional singer. I live in Canterbury, very near David Allenson. And David and I are currently working together with Noah Potvin, is that right? From the United States, on thinking about spirituality and music. My area is very much involved in music, so I've published a couple of books on this. One is Sacred Music in Secular Society, and the next one is called Music and Faith, Conversations in a Post-Secular World, or something like that. I can't remember the name of my own book. And now I'm thinking about writing the next book about how music can transform individuals and communities. And to that end, I've organised an online conference, which I can invite you all to, on February the 24th, which is about sacred and secular music for social change. Because one of the things that I do in Canterbury here is run a small charity which helps communities of the homeless, refugees, and deprived communities, obviously to get food and shelter, but also to connect with each other through the arts. And it's been my experience that the arts are a very, very good way of connecting people. So, for instance, me playing a very bad piano at a meal for the homeless in Ramsgate gets everybody singing and dancing and enjoying their communal life together for a moment, and perhaps forgetting their bigger troubles as they enjoy some hot food and a bit of company and some laughter. So yeah, so basically that's what I'm doing at the moment, and yeah, I think that's it. So I'll pass on to, oh, I don't know, who hasn't been? Sinead, have you been yet?
No, no, Sinead.
Hi everyone, I'm Sinead. I'm from Northern Ireland, and Annalisa invited me to this. I think I've been to one or two other groups, and I'm just here because I'm curious to hear everybody's experiences and what they want to share, and you know what's different thoughts and stuff like that around all of this. I run Soul School. It is what is it? It's I'm a training provider that runs a course. It's licensed from Mind Body Education, but I have the license to run it here in the north and south of Ireland on campus, and students can come anywhere online. The purpose of Soul School for me is to provide a safe space for those who want to really reconnect with themselves and use the arts as a tool to do that and reconnect to their true authentic self. And that can be from using different art forms, meditation, and also, which I think is really important, is learning about our nervous system and all of that as well. The fight or flight and stress, because that really is a big part of the healing process, I think, for our bodies. But yeah, that's kind of what I do. But my own personal background would be the visual arts, having used art not knowing as a child and teenager as a form of therapy and expression for myself and my own healing journey. So that would be where the arts comes in personally for me. So yeah, that's me, I think.
Thank you, Sinead.
Thank you, Jen. Angelo, yeah, you're just below me on the screen, so if that's okay.
Oh, hello. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, indeed.
Oh,
Beautifully.
yeah. Yeah, I think most of you know me, so I can just say I was a Catholic priest in the past for about more than 20 years. And then I left. Now I consider myself like not really atheist, let's say agnostic. And from then I became, I continued actually after my priesthood, be passionate about spirituality. So I've worked to build some kind of research how the spirituality that I already experienced in my priesthood could have been reorganized, rebuilt in a way that did not make reference to God. And I'm still working on it. So yeah, this is, I'm in Cambridge in UK. What else? I don't know at the moment. Yeah, I was distracted now, struggling with the audio, video, the system. I realized that Zoom was not even installed, so just these things.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Angelo.
Thank you.
And do hand over to someone. I think Judith, the other David, S. And I'm not sure how I pronounce this. Agiro. So any of those, Angelo, Michael, and all of those. Hand over to someone. You're now mute.
To somebody.
Hand over to somebody.
I think Lila hasn't spoken.
Okay, Lila.
Hi, thank you, Angelo. Well, I'm one of the co-founders of this group, and we founded it because we felt very strongly that there should be a space for conversation about spirituality and the arts. We felt that it is really lacking from the cultural sphere and from academia and also from the arts. So it felt like seriously, we felt it very strongly, like a real, very passionate about it. So we are now witnessing how this conversation unfolds, and it's fascinating. For me, it's just a very long story. Try to keep it as short as possible, but I started as a multimedia artist, a performance artist, and I just like a week ago, uploaded to my website a trailer of a short video that I made, I co-made in, when was it? In 1988. It was like one of my first kind of works, which I performed I performed at the October Gallery in London, and where I was doing quite a lot of multimedia work, and it was and I collaborated with the then video director of the ICA, who saw my performance and suggested that we do something with it. So, but the reason why I'm telling you is because the topic of the work, the name, the title was Anima Urbana, the city spirit, and the performer was very much like manifestation of the various kind of atmospheres in different places in the city of London, and we were going from one location to the other doing rituals of purification until that image, that character Anima, transformed into an angel, and she's climbing a very high building. Well, anyway, I mean, this particular work in a way sort of represent the fact that I was searching. I was always searching for a spiritual expression through the arts, but I felt that multimedia was the right medium for me to start with. But then I transitioned to film, and I became very interested actually in the relationship between the arts and spirituality when I started to study independent film and video at Central St. Martin's, and this is where I discovered the films of Maya Deren, and that was it for me. I just found that I discovered another filmmaker from history that was seriously expressing, I would say, aspects of the spiritual in her films. But again, when I talk about spirituality, I don't particularly refer to any religious sort of any particular religion. It was just the idea that the spirit is part of the work, and it manifests, and it has its own voice, and it has its own images and characters. And but I then continued doing a PhD on on choreography for the camera and the screen, and which was the result of moving from live performance to screen, trying to see the difference, or trying to see what's unique about moving from live performance to performance on screen. But obviously for me, it was also part of the exploration was that I made a film as part of it myself, and which was also screened in different festivals for dance in the media, but I also selected few works which I analyzed, and I selected works that I felt are given an expression for rituals, and for kind of an inner experience that can be performed or can be expressed only through this particular art form that I was writing about, which is now called screen dance. But when I wrote it, screen dance didn't exist. It was called screen choreography. That was in 2001 when I completed that particular project. And then recently I wrote a monograph, Screen Dance as Rite of Passage, which I would really like to present here maybe in next year, which is really about the project that I was working on, and the name is Gaia Mysterious Rhythms, which also speaks about the feminine spirit, and a story about a young woman's rite of passage as she interacts with nature, with the elements of nature. But then I was really seeking, and I found I met Dr. Mike Hing, maybe you heard of him, and he was one of the only researchers and scholars that was doing basically research in spirituality in conjunction with the arts. And I joined something which doesn't exist anymore, which is there was a Center for Post-Secular Studies at London Metropolitan University, and we had a 2-year project on cinema and film and the spiritual. And there is a lot of research and a lot of written articles and books, and especially in recent years, it became sort of more and more popular. There is a lot of work about the spiritual in cinema from various perspectives, and it's actually fascinating. And and some of the work was written by filmmakers. So it exists. But I must say that it was very difficult for me when I was doing research to have conversations with filmmakers and performers, because I actually approached the people I wrote about, and ask them and try to talk to them about that, about the spiritual experience that they depicted in the artworks, in the films and performances, and they didn't want to talk. Because I think 10 years ago, well, it's now more than 10 years ago, people didn't talk about it, and it really wasn't encouraged. And I was really risking my career and my in academia by suggesting and discussing different topics. I was even ridiculed for it. So it wasn't easy. And then later on, our department, our sort of center was shut down for personal, nothing to do with me, for personal reasons of other people. And I was then invited to teach in a program for the study. It was a BA program for the study of spirituality and mysticism in a Kabbalistic town. It's in the north of Israel, near the Sea of Galilee. And that was a very tiny little program, which was shut down. I'm not there anymore. And but I had an opportunity to learn a lot about mysticism, about mystical traditions, which I'm still very interested in. I'm interested in various traditions, which you would say it's religious sort of based, but obviously the mystical traditions are slightly different. And my role in that department was to teach the arts and to teach cinema and film in relation to in relation to contemporary spirituality and, when possible, mysticism. So I got a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge by meeting different scholars of religion, and at the same time, I then I started a postdoc at the Planetary Collegium of Plymouth University, which was one of the most important experiences, I think, in my life, because I started to work with Professor and artist Roy Ascott, and I recently just finished a book chapter. It was co-written with Edward Chunkin, on Roy Ascott and the and technoetic arts, which brings together the arts, any form of art, spirituality, consciousness studies, and science and technology. And for me, I'm basically someone, because I was working in multimedia and film, I then moved to cyber performance for many various reasons, and I've been continuously making films and developing work. I also wrote and writing quite a lot, academic articles, basically. And I've worked on different research projects, and I'm also currently, for the last, I think 3-4 years, I'm teaching at the Aleph Trust, Liverpool John Moores University, on the MSc program for consciousness studies, spirituality, and transpersonal psychology.
Yep, Lila. I think Leela also. I just want to welcome new people in as well. And explain what we're doing. Thank you so much. And I'll ask you to
just finish.
Welcome, Rainey, and welcome, Irene. Just to explain what we're doing, we're introducing one another. We're introducing ourselves to one another and our interests in spirituality and the arts. And so looking forward to hearing from you. Leela, can you pass on to someone else?
Yeah. I'm not sure the name. ES?
ES.
S, yes. S is short for a Welsh name, which is Esift, ESYLLT. So I'm joining you from Cardiff. Hi, everybody. So my background is working and training as a drama therapist, and my speciality is using creative techniques really for therapeutic purposes, with spirituality being at the center of that practice. I've also done a master's research exploring performance art and spiritual expression within ancient sites of death in the landscape. So exploring issues of loss and bereavement in terms of the response of the living body to ancestors, the land, and also recent bereavement as well. So lots of interests there, sort of conglomerating around spirituality, performance, drama, therapeutic processes, all those sorts of things, and sort of a crossover really within those disciplines. So I was very pleased to see that this group has been formed. So it's really exciting to be part of it. Thank you.
Excellent. There is a conference coming up quite soon in November on the arts in palliative care, which might be of interest to you, with Georgios Tsiris in Queen Mary University. So I'll try and put that in the chat. Can you hand over to someone? I think neither Michael nor the other David nor Judith have so far had a turn. Hand over to one of them.
So Michael then, thanks.
Michael.
Yes, thank you very much. Well, I'm completely new to the group. I'm sitting in Norway, by the way, and when I look outside the window, then it's already snowing here. So winter has started, and my background is philosophy, though I'm working as an associate professor in educational science. And this is one of the reasons that brought me here to this group, because I worked with spiritual practices like 5 years ago, or intensively, with the so-called Trilogos method from Switzerland, which is a spiritual approach to personal development. And in addition, I was doing articles and research on spirituality in academia. And I became quite frustrated with that, because these two didn't go together so well. So what I did then was just to put it to the side, started in this position that I have now, and I'm more and more wondering about teacher education. One of the reasons is because where is creativity and art? It's pretty much absent there. And the next question then is, where is spirituality, which is even more absent there? And so my general question when it comes to spirituality and art, it is how does spirituality come to expression in different ways? And as I said, just to say the final sentence and keep it short, with my background in philosophy, I'm interested in different spiritual practices that kind of foster or nurture the art of living. So that's my personal interest in arts and spirituality. Thank you very much. I hand over to David.
David Perrin.
Great. Thanks very much, Michael. And I'm glad to be here with you today. I participated in the first provocations a while back, so I'm glad to be here today, because this particular element of the reflection is something of interest to me. I'm an academic, recently retired from about 30 years teaching at the university level. I completed a PhD on Paul Ricoeur and hermeneutical philosophy, and how text reflects human life and enlarges human life and produces meaning in human life. So following Paul Ricoeur and his definition of text, and he would He argues, I think quite successfully in his publications, specifically in Time and Narrative, those 3 volumes, that any human production can be interpreted through text, including artistic expressions of all kinds, whether it be music, plastic art forms, painting, visual arts, dance, are all texts because they capture meaningful human life. So that's where my interest is. I have published a number of articles related to this topic, specifically from a Christian perspective. I work within that tradition. And I also published a textbook called Studying Christian Spirituality. There's a chapter on hermeneutical textual interpretation in this wider kind of framing of it that includes the arts. Our fire alarm is being tested today in my building, so there'll be the odd buzz. So there is one article, and I'll just finish with that I published in '96 on mysticism and art. That word's already come up today in the discussion, and specifically then how mysticism does engage affectivity, feelings, and produces new meaning. So I'm going to post in the chat just some of those references if they're of interest to anybody, and you can follow up as you would like. So thank you very much, and I'll pass it on then to Judith.
Judith.
Oh, hello everybody. I think I am refreshingly unacademic. I haven't got any qualifications in anything, but I've always I've missed one of these sessions. That's the only one that I've missed. It's lovely to hear you all talk, and I've written things down, and I can't remember what I wanted to say. Jonathan, have you heard of Together Productions?
No.
Together Productions, they've got 2 choirs that they do, and the one that I've been to is called Mixed Up Chorus, which is quite apt, but the sister choir is specifically for refugees. They're always trying to get funding because it's really hard and it's really difficult, and a lot to get the refugees to be able to travel to do the rehearsals because they haven't got the money. So Together Productions, if you would look, I will have done some good.
Judith, where are they?
Where are they? Well, probably you'd find them on the internet. More specifically, they practice in Archway.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so central London, but basically
okay.
It's all London based.
Right.
So I loved, what was it, the whole body thing that Hannah said. Whole body listening, was it? I thought, yes, I'm liking this.
Full body, yes.
My only practices have really been meditation, which I started in the 70s, and I've done various kinds of meditation, but I don't have a meditation practice at all at the moment. And I was lucky enough to be taught by somebody who was called Max Cade, who developed very early biofeedback machines. I should have filled in the thing which said, why don't you write about yourself? Because it would have helped me to know what I was going to say. I found Annalisa through the Scientific and Medical Network, and she was giving a talk on, I think it was one of her studies, which had been many and various and very intense. And she really seemed to know what she was talking about. And she was working out a taxonomy of states and relating it to artworks in a very ordered and academic way, which is something I can't do. So, yes, I am in a choir. I'm currently in an LSO outreach choir, which is doing a gospel explosion on Saturday, on Guy Fawkes night, in Barbican. So I love singing. I love the human voice. And somebody else, David, I think it was all early music, but voice music. Just to remind you about Jill Percy, if you haven't come across her, she's Rupert Sheldrake's wife.
Thank you.
She worked, yeah, you know, good. I know you know. As long as you know, that's fine.
Thank you.
Is there anything else I want to say? Probably not. So, oh yeah, mainly I'm interested in images and whether the relationship between words and images, and the images probably predate and are a kind of a level below. A substrata. So words are a substrata of, I mean, images are a substrata of words. And
Okay.
yes, thank you for saving me. Can I pass on to Agiro?
Well done.
Hello. Hello. My name is Argyro Tsambazi. It's a Greek name. I'm Greek. I'm a choreographer and I'm also an academic. I'm based in Belfast in Northern Ireland. It's nice to see another person from Northern Ireland as well. My research is in the area of dance and spirituality. My PhD was a practice-based research that was exploring the effects of the application of orthodox ascetic practices to choreographic processes and dance performance. And now I'm on a journey of applying for a postdoc, and I would like to work now on pilgrimage and performance. So yes, I have a background in theology as well as dance. So when I was studying theology, it was the first time that I started thinking about the connection between spirituality and the arts. And I'm very much concerned with the spiritual experience and the artistic experience as well. And I have done some research on flow experiences and ballet in my journey, because I think, as other people mentioned in the beginning, I was almost afraid to do research in spirituality and dance. So I started exploring the topic of flow experience in dance. And then for my PhD, I got a bit more brave and I just tried to connect the Isihasm, which is an Orthodox kind of cluster of mysticism with dance. So my dancers practiced in the night, or they did fasting for several days while creating a piece. Or we did we transformed the Jesus prayer into a movement kind of prayer, or we worked in silence for some days. So I was working in this kind of area.
Lovely, thank you very much. This is now an open space, really, for us to share ideas that have come up. Some of the ones I've sort of scribbled on my piece of paper are the body and spirituality, which I think is a very interesting area, because in some traditions, the body has been denied. And many people here are interested in restoring the body. Also, the relationship between theologies and spirituality and where that plays out. So Angelo, your story is a very interesting one, and one that will be shared by, I know, a number of my colleagues from the Anglican tradition, that they've, in a sense, got that background. And yet I think David and Jonathan, your background are Christian backgrounds. Other people are talking about a dogma-free space and so on. I think that's how that background of our own. David, you raised the notion, which is very keen for musicians, of togetherness and so on. And how does that work out in the other arts? We musicians, we require quite often large groups of people or groups of people. But does that aspect, is that part of the visual and the dramatic art and so on? Those were just some of the interesting things. I think also arising, I think, from Sinead, your notion is how far is spirituality and mental health and consciousness? How far is spirituality concerned with different states of mind or different approaches, which to a certain extent goes back to yours, David, the notion of meaning and purpose, and how the loss of some theologies or the centrality of a theology to a culture means that people have a less ways of creating meaning and purpose than they did once. And I don't know how far that ties up with your philosophy, Michael, and eudaimonia. And I've written quite a bit on eudaimonia, which was a real in term around COVID. So eudaimonia, how that works out, I think is quite important. So I don't know, those are only sort of some things which I've been looking at, really, from all the wonderful things you've been saying. I think this is an excellent gathering. Sometimes in the past we've had largely visual artists, which has made it very, in a sense, we can share quite a lot of things. But I think today we've got almost every art form represented, and we've longed to have drama and dance and other musicians in. So how far can one talk about the word spirituality as being common in the arts, or how far is it specific to the material forms that the various arts take, and so on? Because some, where are our dancer, our giro, it's essential to be embodied. And yet a lot of some of the singing traditions have almost forgotten that singing depends on the body, and have tried to get it out of the body and get rid of some of the bodily sounds, and so on. So would anybody like to come in on things that other people have said that they'd like to pick up, or any of those topics that I've sort of mentioned? As this is an unstructured session, do feel free. You can raise your hand in whatever way. There is a technological way of doing it, or there's an actual hand, an embodied hand that I can see. So Annalisa would like to come in.
Yeah, I would like to, sorry about that. I would like to tell you something about my personal journey that is shifting at the moment. So I did start as a visual artist, and I'm still a visual artist. I mean, you're always what you know. So photography and painting. So I started my research in spirituality through the visual arts. And I have become a little almost bored by the visual arts because they don't move. And what I'm now starting to think, when we put our analytical mind on, our analytical hat, is that perhaps the visual arts are more of the contemplative kind of spiritual expression, because they require looking, and they require almost a static, you're not moving, you're not doing anything, you're just taking in visually what's in front of you. And a lot of visual art is about that, when it is spiritual. What I have learned through the Soul School that is run by Shanid is how important is movement and music and vibrations to work out feelings and emotions. And I've always been a dancer all my life. I've never considered dancing a spiritual activity or a spiritual practice. I was doing it mainly to keep in shape, but I also was attracted specifically to ballet and now jazz dance because of the beauty of dance and because of the music. I can only dance when I am taken by the music. If you ask me to dance on any music, I can't do it. The music needs to move me. And then once I get into the music, then I move without effort. Now, of course, that's very different from ballet, which is very structured, very controlled. And so I also have moved away from ballet more towards expressive dances like jazz and modern dance, although I'm not a contemporary dancer. But I now appreciate far more those type of dances to when I did it before I thought that ballet was, the best that was out there. So I have also been through a transformation in terms of appreciating different arts, and I'm now feeling like my next interest will be in the performative arts, where you have a combination of the arts. So you've got the music, the movement, the visuals, the sound. They all come together to create an immersive experience. And that, I think, is the sweet spot of art and art as a spirituality. I think if we can create something that involves all of our senses, then we really transcend through the arts.
I don't know whether Agero, you would like to come in on that. I'm fascinated in what you said, because the Orthodox Christian tradition is not one that I only know a little. And I didn't know whether you would like to come in. I mean, one of the things that I've always thought about of the visual arts and music and dance is that we use time. And Rowan Williams, talking about music, says the important thing is it makes us review time, because it needs time, which is dance needs time. Don't know whether you would like to say anything about what Annalise has said. Gero.
Yes, I just have to apologize for being in and out. It's just that my child care arrangements for tonight fell apart. So that's why I don't want to be disrespectful or anything. It's just that there's Peppa Pig in the background and mommy. So I'm sorry for that. Yes, I would say that for me personally, as an artist, there's always the question, why do I do art? And I feel that for me, the reason why I do art is that I'm trying to communicate something that I cannot communicate with language, with words. So I'm searching for another kind of language, and I feel that the body, because of all the like archetypical like movements and poses, can communicate so much more through just body language. And so I didn't feel this kind of disappointment yet from dance. I have been in the same area for many years, and I have been dancing since I was a child, and even with ballet, because that's like I do ballet and I do contemporary dance as well. I feel that especially with ballet, probably someone, because the technical difficulty is so big. It's such a demanding dance form. For someone to actually feel this transcending experience has to be in a really high level, and dance ballet in a high level. I think that's when I experienced it first time, when I felt confident that, okay, now I'm in a high level, I can do it. And but then I have to say, in my research, I'm more concerned with the artist and the experience of the artist than with the experience of the audience, which is I guess something that maybe I will explore more in the future. But for my PhD, I took interviews from my dancers and tried to find out about their experience of this full week working with me on all those ascetic practices, and at the same time creating a piece. So yes, I would be more concerned with the experience, and of course the experience comes again from the whole body and the senses. And in my case, because I worked with groups of professional dancers, from being together, from sharing this experience, so it is the body, but then there is this collective body. And then of course when there is audience, then we extend even more. But yeah, the limitation of my research was that.
I'm just wondering whether you know Stockhausen's piece from the 7 days, where he required the musicians to fast and be in meditation and then to perform the piece. It sounds rather similar to what you've done with the dancers. So have a look at From the 7 days. So it was 7 days long, and they had to fast and meditate as well as creating the music. So it seems a parallel,
yes.
a parallel study. Other people's comments or questions to come in?
I just wanted to tag on the fasting and meditation. Yeah. Also part of Marina Abramovich's method. So also when she teaches performance artists and now the public, fasting is a central aspect of her method, as well as the meditative activities that they do during this 5 days. I think she does. They usually last 5 days.
Yeah. And fasting is known to produce a different form of consciousness. In a sense, it does. I mean, it does take you into another form of consciousness. So, which is what Stockhausen explored there. Would anybody else like to come in on this conversation or any other aspects of the conversation at all? David Allenson. David Perrin's gone, and I'm sorry because he was doing recur, and it'd be interesting, Argiro, to talk about, recur and Paul Ricoeur and expression of spirituality, but sadly he's had to go. So do come in, David.
Oh, thank you, June. I've written lots of notes, and now I have a chaotic, straggly idea of all sorts of things going on. But one of the things Argiro said at the end was about when the audience comes in, then it's a different thing. So one of the things that I wrestle with a lot is the way singers who may be very immersed in their activity, because they're in this common medium, whatever their station in life, whatever is going on for them, whether they're rich or poor, distressed or content, we have a common goal for this allotted amount of time together. And then suddenly some people come in and regard what we're doing. And for musicians, particularly in the Western tradition, that sense of rightness and wrongness, are you following the score? Are you conveying the composer's intentions? Was something wrong there? Is there a problem with the timbre, or did someone make a wrong pitch? All of these things create immense anxiety. I won't go down the rabbit hole, which is a very musician's discussion. But what I wanted to say was I've focused increasingly recently on several thoughts. One is to talk to the singers a lot about how we are at play in time together, and we are not creating a product for presentation. When the audience comes in, we're going to share our sense of play in time together. So what is important is process and not product. And therefore, when the audience comes into the space, what we do is we open to them our sense of process. And we say, we are making together now. And there is jeopardy in that. And there may be wrongness and rightness in that. But my hope is for the singers, who are often, in some of my settings, amateur level people who are prone to get very nervous and go wrong. And they're trying to do something quite complicated with me, make these multi-strand textures. And so what I want them to do is to feel that there's a space in which wrongness is appreciated and okay, and that paradoxically will allow them to relax about it, but to emphasize to them that what matters is the interaction of the people in time, which is, as June said, our currency. And to be gifted with someone's attention as you make something is what all artists want, because they want recognition, and they would like someone's ears or eyes to fall upon their work and for them to make a human connection with that person from whatever stage of life they come from. So for me, I think this emphasis on music not being a text, a fixity, a thing that you reproduce, but in fact music being a thing which is remade together and which is uniquely different in each context, because it comes out of those people's bodies in that moment, in that place. So it's the confluence of those energies and those people being present. Some of them are making and some of them are witnessing. But as we all know, if we dance or paint, what we want is the audience's effect, which has often a very real impact on how people make. So you find that the presence of listeners changes what you do, even if they're entirely silent and unspeaking, because their quality of attention gives you, as a musician anyway, the privilege of going inside their cranium, which is really the greatest gift of all, because they've given your attention and their space. And the only other thought I wanted to give was that as someone who is leading this and regarded as an expert in it, one of the tensions I find constantly is not to be authoritarian, but to be releasing of other people's creativity, while nevertheless steering the whole situation for them. And that can be very challenging, because you have to think very carefully about the way people project authority back at you, as well as you earning their respect through your expertise or whatever. But actually, the key for me for dealing with this is to think about where the art is pointing. Where is the product you're making pointing? Does it point back to the self? Does it point back to the maker? Or does it point to something eternal, a value which is outside yourself, a value which is outside time and place, which is something about the wonder of why we are alive, why this little planet is spinning around? And that can come into a theological relationship, or it can just come into an awestruck sense of creation. But I've sung for people who are very egotistical and very self-serving, and I've also sung for people and played for people who have this deep sense that what we're making together is something which points out into the universe and not at ourselves. And that's the way to invite people of all conditions of life to join you in what may be a very unfamiliar kind of art form, I think. Just a few thoughts that bubbled up.
I think it's very interesting, David, the point that you make. And I think there's a huge division in the community music making world around this. First of all, you know the Tudor music, and the Tudor music is now often played in concerts, but it was never intended to be. So at the end of a meal, if you had a set of guests, most of whom could play or sing, people gave the part books out. Nobody was there to listen, but everybody played their part. Everybody played their viol. You had a chest of viols, which was literally a box full of all these instruments with strings on, and people took one and they played the part. And we've got these lovely books existing, which are almost squares, so that the person on the right was looking at the music and left, so they're written as a square, and so on. But that division lies in the community. Some community choirs are quite divided because some of them just want to come and sing each week, and others of them want to do a concert. And some of them I know are almost divided. They meet together and they sing, but one group will never do a concert because they just do it for the fun of doing it. And I think it's a really interesting one. And also, I'm going to come to you in a minute, S. The notion that you use of play, it's fascinating that the word play is used in two different contexts. We use play for children playing and having fun together. And we also paradoxically use the same word for music. which in the hands of an egotistical conductor is not at all like play. It's like order. But I love the way you say, David, that when people meet together to make music, like in those Tudor drawing rooms, that in general we should be playing like children play and enjoying one another's company and finding out what other people can do and so on and so forth. And sometimes in the history of music, which is what you've said also, Agira, about dance, we've lost the sense of play in the pursuit of perfection, and so on. So I think those are important things, David, the presence of an audience, the absence of an audience.
Yes.
There are cases to be made for having one, and there are cases similarly for not having one. Do come in. Just that's it.
Yes, I was just reflecting that on my own training within art psychotherapy, you know, and this whole thing of process and end result, and a skill-based compared to being totally playful without thinking at all about a skills level. And so, for example, I've been involved in training in the visual arts for skilled artists training to be art psychotherapists. And they sometimes find it really difficult of purely exploring the art form, purely in terms of play, so that the skill level isn't looked at all, you know? And I think obviously there's a place for both, but I'm quite interested in the interplay of that. And sometimes, you know, sometimes there's a clear boundary, sometimes there isn't. But I think for people who don't have a particular skill, like I can't sing at all well, but to be able to give voice to my sound is very special, you know? And I think the way these worlds sort of coexist with each other, I think is quite interesting.
Yes, I've just written an article on the drawing room songs. When I was a child, on a Saturday night, we got together with my grandparents and we all sang. We had a song that we sang. And, you know, there was granddad and grandma and me and so on. And I sang whatever little song I could turn out. And when I wrote the article, I realized it was the last time in my musical career that I had sung just for the sake of singing. After that, I was singing because I had an audition, or because I had to sing in a choir, or because there was a festival I had to compete in. And the sense of doing it for its own, just for the fun of doing it, disappeared at the point where I didn't gather in a drawing room and just sing for the sake of singing. And what a tragedy that is. I asked one of our best accompanists at the university, brilliant pianist, whether she ever played the piano for fun. And she thought carefully and she said, no, I don't. I'm always practicing for something. And I think that is a really, that as you become a professional, you lose doing it for fun. Come in, and Annalisa.
Yes, so this is really tickling, because the reason I'm here is because I started researching creativity. So I wanted to unlock my own creativity. I felt blocked. And one path that was suggested to me was spirituality and spiritual practices. But I want to get back to David about his phrase, where the art is pointing. Is it pointing to the artist, the self, or is it pointing to something that transcends the artist? And I have struggled. When is art spiritual? When does it become spiritual? And when is it an artist's self-centered therapy, right? Because there are lots and lots of very famous established artists who have used art as therapy. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, but they basically were obsessed about something and they just kept going at it on and on and on and on and on, sometimes evolving and sometimes just being stuck at that level. And I found an academic reference by Celeste Rhodes, where she wrote about deficiency creativity and being creativity, where maybe I should read it. Basically, thinking about the Maslow pyramid, deficiency creativity is the first type of art that I was mentioning, that points to the self, it points to the artist. Is the artist who's trying to work something out of his system through the art, and the art that is produced is lacking in the sense that it's produced from a position of deficiency, while being creativity is what I think we are all aiming for, which is an art which goes beyond the self, it transcends the self. It's about connectivity, it's about reaching out to the others and bringing and creating. David is doing it beautifully, this existential communitas or spontaneous communitas. That's exactly what you're doing. And I think that was the original purpose of the arts. That's why we developed the arts as a species. I think the arts were originally in a primitive condition, how we unified as a group. Also because when people sing together, their alpha brain waves synchronize. And when they dance together, the brain synchronize. So all kinds of collective and performative arts help people to synchronize together, literally alpha waves. We all become as one. You're saying it, but now neuroscience is giving us the tools and the scientific language to support what people have been saying all along. But it was just an intuition, or it was a personal experience, therefore subjective rather than objective, and now neuroscience is finally providing us with some tools to explain why when people sing together, when people dance together, and they create these communities, science is starting to explain to us why it happens through brain synchronization, but also production of opioids. So we start producing feel-good hormones that bind together people to get, as well as oxytocin. And another thing, I was listening today to this podcast where this neuroscientist explained that when hormones travel through the skin, through sweats, and because of that, they land on other people. So if we are stressed, we sweat cortisol, and then we make people around us stressed. But if we are producing oxytocin, then other people will also receive oxytocin and start producing oxytocin, and that binds us together. So I think that's what I wanted to contribute.
Thanks so much. Michael, I think you were in first with a hand up.
No, that was very interesting, because I didn't know so much about that, in fact, about the more biological aspects of what you were describing, what's happening. What came to my mind, and that started a bit earlier, was from you brought up the term skills. And I think when it comes to arts, and not only arts, you find it everywhere else in any professional education. You have to acquire skills. And it appears that skills is something that you need in order to produce something. You need skills in order to make a living, and so on. With Aristotle, you can call that the practical knowledge. But there are two forms of practical knowledge, and this came to my mind when David, in fact, was describing what can happen when you sing together with people that are not oriented towards their own ego, but more outwards to the universe. And that was the term of inspiration. And for me, good art is about that it inspires. And in the term inspiration, you also have this term spirituality. I remember one of my colleagues, they did a presentation at a conference, a medical conference on inspiration. And then all the medical doctors didn't understand what he was actually telling, because inspiration means to breathe in. But when you see it that from a more metaphorical point of view, then you take something in, you're mediating something. And that doesn't have anything or so much to do with having the right skills or developed skills. And maybe I was just wondering about a bit about it, whether there is a kind of knowledge which is also called phronesis, the practical wisdom, which has more to do with inspiration than with skills. And I mean, you can do everything right, and at the same time it's boring. And this is what's happening in most of the academics at the moment. It's everything is done right and correctly, but still boring.
Yes, I mean, just to come in before I very briefly, Annalisa, for the last 25 years, I've started my thing on spirituality, which David may have actually seen me do. I get people to take their pulses as they arrive in the room, and then we sing together. And then we take our pulses, and miracle of miracles, and people are always surprised. All the pulses have synchronized they've only sung together for 3 minutes. And so, I mean, you don't require in a sense, advanced neuroscience to do it. It's very simple. Just the heart entrains with one another. And I say that one of the main losses of the centrality of Christianity to Western culture may not be anything to do with theology. The big loss is that people are not coming together once a week to sing together and build community, because trips to the do-it-yourself store isn't going to do the same as singing together. And so, for 25 years, some of us have been doing very simple bodily exercises that it's, to show that. Anyway, I'm not going to take any more of Angelo's time. Do come in.
Just sharing some ideas that were in my mind while you were talking, that perhaps could help the discussion. Essentially, is the concept of unintentionality. That is, Annalisa asked, when is art spiritual? Perhaps we should ask also, when is art art? Who establishes if something is art or is not art? And I was thinking that perhaps a key concept is that art can be also unintentional. That is, you can produce art and I can receive art from you, even when you are unaware of producing art. So even in this moment, I can say, oh, for me, what I'm seeing on this screen is art that you are producing. Because I'm amazed or by seeing you or by your voice, and we can find a lot of expressions of this, like in nature, a lot of unintentional art, and it's extremely beautiful. And I was also thinking of children. They produce art for me all the time without needing of wanting to make a masterpiece. This, of course, could create difficulties because this is an extreme generalization that everything becomes art, everything becomes spiritual. But it's not bad because it helps to widen our ideas about what is art and to be more sensitive. So this extremely widening of the concept, it can be, instead of confusing, can help me, telling me, look at these people, they are making art, look at their faces, look at their voices, how they are expressing themselves. This is art. And as well is spirituality. So it's like telling me, pay attention to a lot of things that are happening now. while apparently we are just talking about something, but actually we are producing art and spirituality.
I think it's
I find more fruitful the opposite perspective. That is, what is spirituality? I think the best perspective today is that spirituality is essentially art. Because we can't say anymore that is religion, because atheists and even materialist people claim their spirituality. And it's not philosophy, because philosophy was born as spirituality, but then it became just reasoning and reflecting. And I think in this context, art is the best point or starting point to understand what spirituality is.
I think Dewey, in his wonderful text, Art as Experience, said that if we really see art, you watch the arrow and the person operating the bow and see it as choreography. You see the woman stirring the pot as an act of choreography. So everything can be seen if you can see it in that way. And there was a wonderful person with sight loss who saw music in the sound of the washing machine and heard music in everything. So it's a question of looking at everything in a way that perceives beauty, which you've shown us so beautifully, Angelo, that in a sense, much of what human beings do can be perceived as beautiful, although we don't look at it in that way. But thank you for reminding us of that. In my own work, I'm not going to take Leela's time, but my own work, I'm not sure that nature is as unintentional as you, that if all nature is ensouled, which I believe, then maybe it is also intentional in being beautiful. So, but I think that's another sort of theological, philosophical point, really. Leela, do come in.
Yeah, I was thinking about the difference between skills, having skill and having to do art. I was sort of looking at just the impulse to make art, like which is almost can be compared by some as a spiritual impulse, and art is necessity in terms that you must do it. It's just a feeling that you have as an artist, and I think that transcends the ego and transcends everything else. Because when you must do something, you must create, you must express yourself, everything else disappears. And that's why I find Maslow's model a bit difficult in terms of looking at it in hierarchical methods, because artists often didn't consider the material situations and created nevertheless, regardless of poverty, regardless of wars, regardless of health conditions. So it's something very human to have to do it, to create. And at that point, skill doesn't really matter. And whether you have it or not. I mean, Jung was saying something very interesting, and others as well, about skill. Skill is just something that allows one to forget it and allow the unconscious or the collective unconscious to manifest through the artist. So it's not about the ego, it's not even about the self, it's about something beyond it that comes through the artist when she or he create the work. So I just find it something which is very much part of our humanity, this need to create.
And some would say that in a lot of our arts education now, we've substituted skill for inspiration or spirituality and so on. I know that some people have gone because they've had other things to do, and in theory we have an hour and a half, and I think we've had a brilliant discussion, which we've managed to share at a depth which is quite remarkable across these technological waves, and also from a group of people who in many ways have perhaps limited experience of some of the arts they're listening about, but have found commonalities. Oh, and so I think what I would like to do is to just say a huge gratitude to all of you for all that you've said and being prepared to share so honestly with us today. I hope that you will join us again. We haven't a date as yet, but it'll be circulated. And I'm hoping that some of you have taken notes of the things in the chat, and certainly some of the musicians, David and Angelo, and people will look at, you know, submitting papers to some of these conferences and things. But I love that, Judith. Thank you to you all. Real food. I love that. Food for thought. And I think we've had plenty of that, and food for our own spiritualities. So I think it's time to shut the room and hope that all of you will have a splendid evening, and that your evening will be blessed, if that's a word that you like, and that all your artistic endeavors you will be in flow, and you will feel inspired. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.